At a lavish five-star resort, a man arrogantly insults a quiet, unassuming guest, completely unaware he's face-to-face with Hollywood legend Keanu Reeves. The twist? When he finds out who he just disrespected, the entire room stops cold. You won't believe what happens next. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The sun cast golden ripples across the infinity pool at Paradise Bay Resort, where Victor Harding stood adjusting his designer sunglasses. At 45, he had crafted his image with the precision of a master jeweler, from his perfectly tailored swim shorts to his limited edition watch that caught the light with every gesture. This was his element, a five-star sanctuary where the world's elite came to escape. Victor watched as his assistant Maria arranged his private cabana just the way he liked it. Fresh towels, precisely folded. Champagne, perfectly chilled. Everything had to be flawless. It was what separated people like him from the common crowd. As CEO of Harding International, he had built his reputation on this attention to detail, and his fortune on knowing exactly who belonged where. "Mr. Harding," Maria called out, "your investors' meeting has been moved to Thursday, and the spa confirmed your appointment for this afternoon." Victor nodded dismissively, his attention caught by something, or rather, someone, that seemed jarringly out of place in this carefully curated paradise. A man sat cross-legged on one of the pool chairs, wearing what appeared to be a well-worn t-shirt and simple board shorts. His long dark hair was tied back casually, and he was completely engrossed in a paperback book, seemingly oblivious to the luxury surrounding him. "Maria," Victor whispered sharply, gesturing her closer. "How did that person get in here? This is supposed to be an exclusive resort." Maria glanced at the man and back to Victor, her expression professional but uncertain. "He's a registered guest, Mr. Harding. He checked in yesterday." Victor's jaw tightened. In his world, appearance was everything, and this man's casual demeanor felt like an insult to everything Paradise Bay represented. He watched as the stranger smiled warmly at a passing server, engaging in what appeared to be a genuine conversation about their day. "Richard," Victor called out to his friend, lounging nearby. "Are you seeing this? It's like someone walked in off the beach and decided to make themselves at home." Richard Whitmore, a fellow business magnate, looked up from his tablet. "Not everyone understands the proper etiquette of these establishments, Victor. Perhaps he won a contest or something." The stranger's calm presence continued to irritate Victor throughout the morning. He observed as the man moved from his reading spot to the juice bar, ordering something simple and chatting with the bartender as if they were old friends. There was something about his authenticity that seemed to draw people in. Staff and guests alike responded to his genuine warmth. Later that afternoon, as Victor made his way to the exclusive poolside restaurant for lunch, he overheard snippets of conversation about a charity event being hosted at the resort that evening. Apparently some celebrity was involved, though Victor was too preoccupied with his phone calls to catch the details. "Mr. Harding," the maitre d' greeted him, "your usual table is ready." Victor settled into his seat, positioning himself to have a clear view of the pool area. To his annoyance, the casual stranger was still there, now helping a child retrieve a toy that had fallen into the water. The genuine smile on his face as he handed the toy back to the grateful child made Victor's expensive lunch taste bitter in his mouth. "Can you believe this?" he muttered to his lunch companion, James Foster, a banking executive he'd known for years. "This place used to have standards. Now they're letting just anyone in." James looked uncomfortable. "Victor, maybe we should focus on the merger discussion." But Victor wasn't listening. He had spent years cultivating his image, his status, his place in society's upper echelons. The very presence of someone who seemed so unconcerned with these unwritten rules felt like a personal affront. As the afternoon wore on, Victor's irritation grew. He watched as the stranger moved through the resort with an ease that seemed almost supernatural, making genuine connections with everyone he encountered. It wasn't just that he looked out of place, it was that he seemed completely comfortable being himself, in a world that Victor had always believed required careful curation and performance. Little did Victor know, his perfectly controlled world, was about to be turned upside down. The charity event that evening would reveal truths about status, authenticity, and the true meaning of class that would shake the very foundation of his carefully constructed reality. The Paradise Bay Resort's grand ballroom was transformed for the evening's charity gala. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables dressed in silk, while waiters circulated with trays of champagne and artfully presented hors d'oeuvres. Victor Harding stood near the entrance, holding court with a group of admirers as he detailed his latest business triumph. "The key is knowing your worth," he explained, gesturing with his champagne flute. "In this world, you have to maintain certain standards. It's what separates the extraordinary from the ordinary." The small crowd around him nodded appreciatively, but their attention suddenly shifted as a murmur rippled through the ballroom. Victor turned to see what had caused the disturbance, and his blood ran cold. The casual stranger from the pool was walking in, still wearing his simple attire, though he'd exchanged his t-shirt for a plain black button-down shirt. "Unbelievable," Victor muttered under his breath. "They're letting him into the gala too." But something was different about the atmosphere. People weren't avoiding the casually dressed man. They were gravitating toward him. Victor watched in confusion as several high-profile guests he recognized approached the stranger with warm smiles and genuine respect. The resort's manager, Thomas Wellington, stepped onto the small stage at the front of the ballroom, tapping a glass for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, we are honored to welcome you to tonight's charity gala benefiting the Children's Future Foundation. We are especially privileged to have with us tonight our special guest, whose generosity and humanitarian work has touched lives around the world. Please welcome Keanu Reeves." The room erupted in applause as the casual stranger, Keanu Reeves himself, made his way to the stage. Victor felt the floor shift beneath his feet as realization crashed over him. All day he had been judging, mocking, and dismissing one of Hollywood's most beloved actors, known as much for his humility and kindness as for his impressive career. Keanu's speech was simple but powerful, focusing on the importance of genuine human connection and the responsibility that came with privilege. Every word seemed to pierce Victor's carefully constructed armor of superiority. "True luxury," Keanu said, his voice carrying across the hushed room, "isn't about what we wear or where we stay. It's about how we treat each other, how we share our blessings, and how we lift others up rather than looking down on them." Victor felt countless eyes turning to him, particularly those who had witnessed his behavior earlier in the day. His carefully cultivated image of sophistication now felt hollow and superficial compared to Keanu's authentic presence. After the speech, Victor watched as Keanu moved through the crowd, giving each person he spoke with his complete attention. There was no pretense, no performance, just genuine human connection. The same quality that Victor had earlier dismissed as unsophisticated now revealed itself as true grace. Maria approached Victor with a concerned expression. "Mr. Harding, you should know. Several people overheard your comments by the pool today. It's already circulating on social media." Victor loosened his bow tie slightly, feeling the weight of his actions bearing down on him. His phone buzzed with notifications. Colleagues, friends, and business partners all sharing links to posts about his behavior. His carefully curated reputation was unraveling in real time. The evening progressed like a surreal dream. Victor observed as Keanu chatted with resort staff, asking about their families and listening to their stories with genuine interest. He watched as the actor helped an elderly guest who had dropped her purse, and how he deflected attention from himself to focus on the charity's mission. Every interaction was a stark contrast to Victor's own behavior, and each one felt like a lesson he should have learned long ago. The very qualities he had ridiculed, the casual dress, the unpretentious manner, the easy warmth with everyone regardless of their status, were precisely what made Keanu so respected and admired. As the gala reached its peak, Victor found himself standing alone at the bar, his usual crowd of sycophants notably absent. He ordered a drink, his hand slightly shaking as he reached for the glass. The bartender, whom he had barely acknowledged in all his visits to the resort, gave him a knowing look. "You know," the bartender said quietly, "Mr. Reeves has been coming here for years. Always remembers everyone's names, asks about our families. Never once acted like he was better than anyone else." Victor's carefully constructed world of status and superiority was crumbling around him, and in its place, an uncomfortable truth was taking shape. He had spent so much time focusing on appearing extraordinary that he had forgotten how to be simply human. The morning after the gala, Paradise Bay Resort felt different to Victor Harding. The same sun shone on the same pristine pools, but the light seemed to illuminate things he'd never noticed before. The genuine smile of the valet parking attendant, the quiet efficiency of the housekeeping staff, the way the gardener carefully tended to each plant with loving attention. Victor sat, alone at his usual premium breakfast spot, his phone face down on the table. He couldn't bear to look at the growing storm on social media. His comments about Keanu Reeves had spread like wildfire, painting him as the perfect example of everything wrong with privilege and elitism. Several business associates had already sent him concerned messages about their partnerships. "More coffee, Mr. Harding?" asked Sophia, the breakfast server who had been attending to him all week. For the first time, Victor really looked at her name tag, at her face, at the slight tremor in her hands that suggested exhaustion. "Yes, please, Sophia," he replied, using her name for the first time. Her surprise was evident, and it made his chest tighten with shame. "And how is your mother? I overheard you mentioning she was in the hospital." Sophia's eyes widened. She's doing better, sir. Thank you for asking." She poured his coffee with a genuine smile, one that made Victor realize how many such moments of human connection he had missed in his pursuit of status. As he sipped his coffee, Victor noticed Keanu at a corner table sharing a simple breakfast with some of the resort's maintenance staff. They were laughing together, completely at ease, while the actor listened intently to their stories. The scene was a stark contrast to Victor's usual breakfast routine of power meetings and business calls. A young boy approached Keanu's table, clutching a worn action figure from one of the actor's movies. Instead of brushing the child off or giving a quick autograph, Keanu invited him to sit down. Victor watched as the actor spent the next 15 minutes engaging with the boy, asking about his dreams and encouraging his imagination. "He does this every time he's here," said a voice. Beside Victor, it was Thomas Wellington, the resort manager. "May I join you?" Victor gestured to the empty seat, noticing how Thomas chose to sit rather than hover deferentially as he usually did. "Every time?" "Mr. Reeves has been coming here for years," Thomas explained, his tone casual but pointed. "He knows most of our staff by name, remembers details about their lives, shows genuine interest in their well-being. He's taught me more about running a luxury resort than any management course ever could." "What do you mean?" Victor asked, his curiosity genuine for the first time in years. "True luxury isn't about the thread count of our sheets or the vintage of our wines," Thomas said, watching as Keanu posed for a photo with the maintenance staff. "It's about how we make people feel, all people, not just the ones with premium memberships." The words hit Victor like a physical blow. He thought about how he had treated the staff throughout his stay, barely acknowledging their existence unless something wasn't to his liking. He thought about all the times he had complained about the smallest imperfections, never considering the human beings working tirelessly to create his perfect experience. Later that morning, Victor found himself walking along the beach, his expensive loafers carried in his hand as he let his feet sink into the sand. He watched as Keanu helped a group of staff members clean up some debris that had washed up on shore. The actor worked alongside them as an equal, making the task feel more like a community effort than manual labor. One of the staff members was Joey, a young man Victor had berated just days ago for being too slow with his luggage. Now he watched. As Joey laughed at something Keanu said, his movements confident and purposeful. The young man was clearly capable and hard-working. Victor had just been too blinded by his own importance to notice. As Victor observed the scene, he began to understand that his carefully constructed world of exclusivity and superiority was built on a foundation of sand. Real strength, real class, real worth. These things had nothing to do with designer labels or premium memberships. They were about human connection, about lifting others up instead of looking down on them. His phone buzzed again, another message from his board of directors. They were concerned about the viral videos of his behavior, about the potential impact on their company's image. Victor had spent decades building his empire on the principle that status was everything. Now that foundation was crumbling and, surprisingly, he felt something close to relief. As the morning wore on, Victor found himself sitting on a beach chair, watching the interaction between Keanu and the resort staff with growing fascination. Every gesture, every laugh, every moment of genuine connection seemed to teach him something new about what it meant to be truly wealthy. Not in money, but in spirit. A memory surfaced from his childhood, his father, a self-made man, telling him that true class wasn't about what you owned, but about how you treated others. Somewhere along the way, Victor had forgotten that lesson, replacing it with the cold calculations of status and appearances. Now, watching Keanu Reeves demonstrate that truth without words or pretense, he felt like he was awakening from a long, isolating dream. The afternoon sun was beginning to dip toward the horizon when Victor finally found the courage to do what he knew he needed to do. He had spent hours watching, reflecting, and coming to terms with the person he had become and the person he wanted to be. Now, as he approached Keanu Reeves sitting quietly by the pool with his book, his heart pounded with an unfamiliar humanity. "Mr. Reeves," Victor said, his voice lacking its usual commanding tone, "may I speak with you for a moment?" Keanu looked up, his eyes showing recognition but no judgment. "Of course," he replied, gesturing to the chair beside him. "And please, call me Keanu." Victor sat down, noticing for the first time that the book Keanu was reading was a worn copy of The Alchemist, a story about a journey of self-discovery. The irony wasn't lost on him. "I owe you an apology," Victor began, the words feeling foreign but necessary. "My behavior yesterday, my comments, they were inexcusable. I've spent so long judging people based on appearances that I've become exactly what I always feared, someone who has everything but values nothing." Keanu listened quietly, his attention fully focused on Victor's words. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. "You know, in my experience, it's never too late to change the story we're telling, about ourselves and about others." "But how?" Victor asked, genuine vulnerability creeping into his voice. "I've built my entire life around these artificial standards. My company, my relationships, everything is based on this idea of exclusivity and status." "Maybe that's exactly why you're in the perfect position to make a real difference," Keanu suggested. "You have influence, resources, the ability to create change. The question is, what kind of change do you want to create?" Their conversation was interrupted by Sophia, who approached with a tray of water. Victor noticed her hands were shaking, more than usual, and this time he couldn't ignore it. "Sophia," he said, "please sit down for a moment. You look exhausted." Both Sophia and Keanu looked surprised, but while Sophia hesitated, Keanu smiled encouragingly. She sat carefully on the edge of a nearby chair. "How many hours have you worked today?" Victor asked. 14, sir," she admitted. "With my mother's medical bills, I've been taking extra shifts." Victor felt something crack inside him, the last remnant of his old self, perhaps. "That ends today. Thomas," he called to the resort manager who was passing nearby, "we need to talk about staff scheduling and healthcare benefits. And Sophia, please, take tomorrow off, with pay." The next few hours passed in a blur of action and revelation. Victor found himself in deep conversation with Thomas about resort policies, working conditions, and ways to improve both guest experience and staff well-being. Keanu occasionally offered insights, but mostly he watched with quiet approval as Victor began his transformation from tyrant to advocate. By evening, Victor had made several calls to his company's board of directors, outlining a new vision for corporate social responsibility. He proposed a complete overhaul of company policies, focusing on employee welfare and community impact rather than just profit margins and market status. "You're doing good work," Keanu said, as they watched the sunset together. But remember, true change isn't about grand gestures, it's about the small moments of kindness we choose every day. As if to demonstrate, Keanu waved to Joey, who was finishing his shift. The young man came over, and to his surprise, Victor stood up and extended his hand. "Joey, I believe I owe you an apology as well," Victor said, "and I'd like to hear more about that college program you mentioned to Keanu earlier. My company might be interested in starting a scholarship fund." The joy in Joey's eyes was worth more than any luxury suite Victor had ever booked. As they talked, other staff members gradually joined their circle. For the first time in his life, Victor found himself truly listening to the stories of people he had once considered beneath his notice. As the stars began to appear over Paradise Bay Resort, Victor realized that he had experienced something more valuable than any business deal or social conquest. He had rediscovered his humanity, and with it, a new purpose. "Thank you," he said to Keanu, as their paths prepared to part, "not just for forgiving my behavior, but for showing me a better way to live." Keanu smiled that famous, gentle smile. "We're all on a journey, Victor. The trick is to remember that everyone we meet along the way is on their own journey too. Treat them with kindness, and the path becomes clearer for everyone." Victor watched as Keanu walked away, still in his simple clothes, still carrying that worn paperback, still radiating the quiet authenticity that had challenged everything Victor once believed about success and worth. That night, before going to bed, Victor did something he hadn't done in years. He wrote thank you notes to every member of the resort staff he could remember. And for the first time since arriving at Paradise Bay, he slept peacefully, knowing that tomorrow would be the first day of a very different kind of life.